Mallory, pronounce your last name for me?
Fotiades.
Fotiades.
Yes.
Oh, we got that wrong.
Oh, everybody does.
You're still going to get it wrong.
I'm used to that. Just call me Mallory.
Mallory. I will refer to you as Mallory.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see us? Are we on?
Oh, I don't know. Is the live one? Sorry, wasn't ready.
I think we're live from New York. Okay.
Yeah, let's see you guys.
All right. So is it 12 o'clock?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right. So we're going to start here. We're going to have some people walk in. For those that are in here, thank you for coming. We have a very strange situation going here. We have our team meeting occurring on this side of the room, and we have a class on this side of the room, and we're going to have some people coming in as we go through this. But the cool thing is we have Mallory here. Say your last name again, Mallory.
Mallory Fotiades.
There'll be a test on that later. So that's cool. Mallory is a finance expert, otherwise known as a mortgage loan officer. But I like finance expert because that's who I like to deal with, is the finance experts. And here's the thing, you guys. The reason why Mallory's here, among other reasons, is to talk about money, right? Because in my experience, and I've been doing this a little bit, I think that the biggest misconception out there is people do not invest in real estate because they don't think they have enough money, right?
Correct.
Do you hear that from time to time?
I do, yes.
Right? They get psyched out. They don't think they can buy. It's too expensive. They're going to need more than they have. All kinds of different, I'll call them falsehoods, that keep people from investing in real estate. Okay? I'm going to do a little speech here in the beginning just to get you all up to speed. Because here's the thing. I'm on a bit of a crusade, and these guys know it because I talk about it all the time. I think that pensions are old school, right? They're going away if they haven't gone away already. I think Social Security as a safety net is probably a misnomer. I don't think that's going to happen. Hey, Renee.
Hello.
We have a combo class/team meeting today, which is interesting. And we're live. So say hi to the 20 million people watching. So at any rate, I don't think there is a safety net. I don't think that people's savings accounts or their credit cards are big enough that are going to get them through their kids' college costs. And if they don't go to college, the cost to get your kid maybe into a business and fund it. The cost of your retirement, right? These are big life events. The third cost is the cost associated with the elder care or assisted living of your parents, assuming they don't have that worked out. You don't want them living at crappy acres. And then the fourth big thing is your own elder care /assisted living. At some point, we're going to get to the end, and I don't think that a whole lot of people have that worked out, how that's going to go for them, other than they cross their fingers and hope that the lottery ticket that they bought is going to work out. But I don't think it has to be that way. Matter of fact, I think people could and should use real estate, cash flowing real estate that somebody else is going to pay for to fund their kids' school, right? Hey, Courtney, come on in. We got a combo team meeting class, and Courtney's going to be singing later, which is interesting. She didn't know. But good news, it'll be the theme to Titanic. Yep. All right, so at any rate, so the reason why we're here and Mallory's here is because I think people need to invest in real estate. I got my daughter in. She's got her first property going. We got our son going. Courtney got started when she was just a spring chicken. And I think if you don't have an investment property yet, you need to get one. All right? We have a little gentleman or a big kid. I don't know. Whatever. We got a 16-year-old that works with us as an intern, and he's looking at buying his first place. And just think about this. Go forward. He's 16 in 20 years. Let's go crazy and say 30 years from now, when he's 46 or slightly younger than I am right now, he's going to have a property that's been fully paid off by somebody else, and it's going to cash flow all the way through that period of time. How amazing is that, right? I mean, I get hammered on this. I feel like I'm in a desert on a dark night, and there's this one sign, this neon sign that's blinking, and it says, I wish I would have. I wish I would have, right? And I'm reading that going, I wish I would have. I wish I would have invested in real estate 20 years ago, right? I wish somebody would have had this talk 20 years ago. But you know what? 20 years ago, I thought I could never afford an investment property. I could barely afford my beer budget. How am I going to get some type of property? But that's a fallacy. Yeah. That's an absolute fallacy. So I asked Mallory to be here because I want to talk about the how-tos. And I want you all to ask questions too if you have how-tos. So, Mallory, you want to start out with something before I start asking a bunch of questions?
Yeah, no. So for me, we bought our first home with a VA loan when I was 22 years old. My husband, 24 years old. We've had that house, gosh, now since 2005 is when we bought that house. It is fully paid off. When we moved down here to Florida, we started purchasing again for another primary home. And so we've been able to utilize the VA system, occupy a home for 12 months, turn it into a rental. And we've been able to do that successfully. And now we're on property number 4. Hope to be our forever home. Who knows at this point, things could change. But I think there's a lot of...
So are the first 3 cash flowing?
They are. Yes.
One's paid off. Do you have mortgages on the other 2?
We do have mortgages on the other 2.
But they're cash flow positive.
They are cash flow positive. Even with we've all seen it with the insurance, home insurance. We have one over in the Woodlands in Niceville. We were pretty cash flow heavy on that property, making about $800 a month on that property. Even when our insurance doubled, we are still cash flowing. It may not be as much as we want, but eventually things will slow down. Insurance will get a little bit better. We're hoping to get some reprieve over the next couple of years for that. But we are still seeing cash flow positive.
So Mallory, hold on a second. Mm-hmm. You got those properties. One's already paid for. 2 are financed.
Correct.
And who's paying for the financing? Is it
the
the renter?
The renters are paying for it.
The renter. Somebody else is paying for it and not you.
Mm-hmm. That is our...
So it costs you nothing to own those properties. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. How much... All right, so I'm going to get into my first questions then, right?
Go for it.
So I don't have enough money to buy an investment property. I'm saying you don't have enough knowledge. Is that fair to say? Because there's a lot of programs out there that provide money. So how does someone buy a house, investment property, condo, house, whatever, if they don't have a big check? Let's say I don't have a big checkbook.
So,
this is a money down question.
Money down question. What we could do is look into moving into it as a primary. If you're willing to make the sacrifice, occupy the home as a primary. They have low down payment options, as little as 5% down. If you are a first-time home buyer, you could potentially get 3% down. That's pretty darn good. If you're looking at an investment property, and if you're just willing to live in it for 12 months, after 12 months, there is no stipulation on what you can do with that property.
So wait a minute, pause. So might be a problem if it's a family with kids.
Correct.
But if I'm a young person, right, say teenager or 20s, maybe in college, maybe I should buy a place where my kid goes to college and have roommates pay the rent.
Correct.
And I can still do it as 3% down because I'm living in it as a primary.
Correct.
Or my kid is, or I'm co-signing or something.
And I was just about to say that. One of the big things that I'm starting to see now are parents purchasing for their kids. We had one recently.
Hold on, we're having a team meeting and a class. This is Mallory. She's a finance expert known as a loan officer. She's talking about how to get money. Right up our alley. You can't see him, but that's the legendary John Skinner. Well, let's bring him in, everybody. John Skinner. Yeah, cool. All right, so at any rate, what we're talking about, Skins, is the number one thing that most people have as a reason they don't buy investment properties, they don't think they have the money. All right, I don't have the checkbook to buy it. All right, and Mallory said you don't need that much down. If you buy it as a primary, you can get as low as 5 or 3%, right? Which we'll look at the math here in a minute is doable. So, and then I said, well, if you're a family, it might be because she's saying you have to live in it for 1 year. And if you're a family, that could be difficult to move into a house for even 1 year if you're a family and have a roommate or whatever. But if you're young, like I see some people in this room or our kids or your kids, they could, if they're in college or something, or they're just they're young and just out of the house, buy a house. And she was saying something about co-signing.
So what I'm seeing a lot now is where parents are co-signing for their college students. And rather than doing it as an investment property, a lot of people are like, I want to do it as an investment property. We talk to them a little bit more about what they're doing it for. They're like, I want to do it as a second home. Go into the details and we figure out they're buying it in a college town for their kid to live in. And then their plan is to move it. And I'm like, let's flip it. Let's flip the script. Let's get your child as a primary borrower, and then parents go in as a non-occupying co-borrower. Now you have a primary residence that is now eligible for the down payment assistance programs that are in Florida, because Hometown Heroes, Florida Assist, those things that are available for down payment assistance program, the non-occupying cosigner doesn't have to occupy the home to be eligible for those things. So those are intricate little ways to get into a home, essentially no money down.
No money down. What? I don't have money. So did you just say no money down?
No money down.
Or very little?
Very little.
You can do it, right?
Correct.
Hey, Mallory, ask me, have you ever co-signed with one of your kids to buy a house?
Have you ever co-signed with one of your kids to buy a house?
How'd you know? Yes, I have. Yes. Matter of fact, that's how my daughter got into her first house. And the reason why we did it is, one, she was young. She doesn't have any credit or very little credit history. And I know that the value of housing, especially in Destin, Florida, is going to the moon. And if she doesn't get into a house soon, and this is my worry for most young people, if they don't get into a house soon, the opportunity to get into a house is going to get harder and harder and harder as the buy-in gets higher and higher and higher. It's amazing how prices in the last 2 years have doubled for housing in the United States, and certainly here in Destin, right? And now mortgage rates have jumped insanely up in the last little bit. So it's going to be very, very difficult for young people. We're moving towards renter nation. We are absolutely, they're not going to be able to afford the down payment. They're going to be comfortable with the rent. So if that's the way we're going, y'all should own property, right? Don't be the renter. Be the landlord. It's a better world for sure. So we just said co-sign if you have a young person, right? Get them on it. Does the young person need anything else?
No, they do not have to have a 2-year work history. We don't have to use any income at all for them, because we are solely using the parental income on this. They are funding, they are providing the income for this. We just need the kid to go to school, make sure that the payments are made on time, which the parents are probably going to offset with renters and roommates to help pay that mortgage. So we just got to make sure that those payments are made on time. I will say, if you want to go into that avenue of purchasing, the most important thing is making sure that your child has a credit score. And one of the best ways to do that, make sure you have good credit yourself, because this will completely ruin everything if you don't. But get them as a cosigner on a credit card. That's the fastest way to populate a credit score. So your credit history now becomes your child's credit history. So the length of history that you have that takes so long for us to build when we're starting out, or maybe not even have credit scores, because that's one of the biggest things that I see when even the young VAs, soldiers coming in that I deal with a lot, they don't have credit scores, so I'm having to work with them to get a credit
just because they're young.
Just young, and nobody's done anything. And the quickest thing you can do to establish credit is cosign.
On
put
the
them as
credit
an authorized user on your credit card. Doesn't mean that they have to have access to that card. You're not saying, here's my credit card, you're now an authorized user. You're saying, I'm going to provide you with the credit that I've worked hard to build my entire life and pass it on to you. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that you can give your kid.
Or make sure they have a credit card, not a debit card, a credit card, and they pay it off. Don't let them go crazy,
Yes.
right? With these skins on Fortnite or whatever the heck it is, right? I get these things like, what is a skin? You know, I'll tell you what it is, like $18, and there's a whole lot of them. Fortunately, he's over that. Now he's into more expensive things. But yeah, so you can do it, right?
Absolutely.
Get your kid into some credit early. Get them on something. If they're not on it, get them on yours as an unusable cosigner, and that'll get them in, right? That's for young kids. Let's say, and do they have to be in college? Can they?
No.
They don't have to be in college, right? Maybe they didn't go to college.
You just need to be 18 years old.
You got to be 18. So let's be strategic about this. If you have some non-18-year-old, start thinking about it. Here's the other thing. Let me ask you, Mallory. I'm just thinking out loud. If you guys have any questions, fire them. Let's say somebody like Courtney Ledesma over there, right? The cute one that walked in. Did we cheer? You were going to sing later. Okay, I got you.
No, I'm still singing later.
Yeah, you're singing later, so she's warming up. But she has young kids. How old?
5 months and 2.5.
Yeah, that's old. Or that's young, right? So in theory, they're going to turn 18. So if Courtney was smart, she would go buy a property that somebody else is going to pay for. And in 20 years or 15 years, the likelihood that that's going to go up in value is almost certain.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because let me ask you this. Here's how I know it. Do you wish you would have bought a property 20 years ago? Yeah. I wish I would have bought 100 of them. Or 1,000 if we're wishing. So yeah, in 20 years, 15 years, it's going to be more, right? And if you buy it now on a 30-year mortgage even, that's 15 years of somebody paying that off. So somebody's paying it down, and appreciation and inflation is pushing it up, creating a ton of equity, fair? That you can tie to your kids' college, not to mention the accounting benefits, right? So the smart play is that, but you don't understand, I don't have any money. Well, you do. You just don't have the knowledge.
You haven't tapped into that equity.
You haven't tapped into. And can we use a home equity line of credit? Do you have if I have a house?
You do. You
How would
can.
that work?
So essentially, a home equity line of credit is where we're going to take a lien out against.
This is a
the
HELOC.
equity.
You probably know it as a
a
HELOC.
HELOC. You're going to take a line of credit out against the equity within your home. Typically, we're going to look between 80 and 90% of the equity, but if you've got 15 years going into it, you've got a lot of equity tied up in that. We'll look at getting an appraisal, and it's going to be a balloon. Typically, you're going to be looking 5 to 10 years to get that line of credit paid off. But that's, you can use that in many different ways. You can use it for college, for student loans. You can use it to buy a car. You can even use that to purchase a new home.
Yeah, don't buy it on the cars and all that junk.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying,
No,
but
yeah.
don't buy assets, not liabilities.
Absolutely. So yeah, you can take the HELOC and what you're pulling out of the home and use it as a down payment for a new home. Now you do have to be careful with that because you don't want to, you have to make sure you're doing it legally. You're not going to say, I'm going to do this do this on a primary home and then turn around and say you're going to be purchasing a primary home. You just signed a note that says I'm going to pay this off, for the next 12 months. Even on a HELOC, that still is applicable. So, make sure that you're going to be using that in the next home that you're going to be using, or the funds that you're using it for. Make sure it's a second home or an investment property.
All right, Mallory, let me ask you this. I have house number 1. I'm living in my house. I have equity in it. I'm feeling good. I want to get house number 2. All right? I can pull some equity out of house number 1. Buy house number 2, right? Use that equity as the down payment.
Correct.
Okay, and then over the next few years, because it's probably going to be I have a low interest rate. I'm at 2 point whatever, but I'm taking a second mortgage. That second mortgage has no impact on my first mortgage?
No.
No, not on a HELOC. On a cash out refi, yes. On a HELOC, no.
Correct.
So you take the money out of house number 1 and you buy house number 2, and you put renters in there that cover, this is cash flow, positive, not negative. You got to cash flow this thing from day one, no matter what. Be smart about it, right? But if that thing's cash flow positive, and you have renters paying that off, at some point they take the cash flow overage, pay off your HELOC, and now you have 2 houses, and somebody else is paying off 1.
Correct.
Right? You got a question, Vicki?
What are the interest rates for HELOCs compared to just a conventional loan for an investment property? What's the difference?
Absolutely. So a HELOC, you're typically not going to get like $300,000 for it. You're
It's
probably
a down payment we're looking for, right?
correct. You're looking for a down payment. So you're looking for maybe $50,000, maybe no more than $100,000. You're probably looking at about 10% for that. But that's still, you're not. It's about 10%, but you're not looking at.
And it's a short-term loan.
Yeah.
I would look at maybe 3 years. Does that seem like might
I
even
would
be
say
long?
3 to 5 years
Okay.
at the most on a HELOC is what you're looking for. But you have the ability, there's no prepayment penalties on a HELOC, so you're able to pay those off without any penalty.
And the overflow cash from your investment property would go back and pay that 10% and everything, if you're doing it right.
So you're borrowing money to put a down payment, your other mortgage is gonna look at it as a debt.
We are going to count that in your debt to income ratio, but if you're looking at an investment property, there's ways to offset it. So if it's a true investment property, we can actually do what is called a rent estimator, and we're going to look at the appraisal, and we're going to have the appraiser do rental comps for the area. So now let's say your mortgage payment is $2,000, all included, for the investment property. The appraiser comes back and says, hey, reasonable cost for rent in this area is $2,500. We're essentially going to take that and wash that debt off. So that is not going to be included in your debt to income
Is this a
ratio.
DSCR loan?
No.
No, this is a-
regular 30-year fix.
Nice.
We can actually offset that when you're purchasing it with an appraisal rent estimator. And it's a great tool.
What is this called?
Appraiser rent.
A comparable rent schedule.
Comparable
That's
rent
not how that
schedule.
works. They just estimate your rent for a year and subtract that amount from your debt.
No, we are essentially washing that off. I wish if there was something
Hey, wait,
to-
if there was something,
we could write
only there
off.
was something. Refer to me as something, right? Oh, do we have a marker? If only, did anybody have a marker? Is there a doctor in the house?
Sure, it's permanent.
Yeah, right on my back. All right.
So what
For you
is
playing at home, this might be a little awkward, but too bad. Do we have a marker?
I think she's getting one for us.
There you go.
All right.
Thanks so much. So what I really think is, and it's what a lot of people are not aware of when it comes to an investment property, we can offset the incoming rent with a rent comparable schedule on an appraisal. So let's say your PITI, which is principal, interest, and insurance, your total payment is going to be $2,000 a month. And I'm just doing simple math right here. We now have a rent comparable schedule on the appraisal that says, hey, marketable rent, comparable rent for this area is $2,500. We're not going to use this extra $500 right here and add it towards income, but essentially what we're going to do is we're going to wash this off. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
This $2,000 is no longer valid in your debt to income ratio.
Because it's covered.
It's covered. That is what they're projecting,
Because
and
your income is coming in.
the income is coming in, and we're not even looking at like a 12 months. We're not looking at how long that's going to last. The appraiser's done the comps, just like he does the comps when he's doing the value of your home. This is a tool right here that I think a lot of people don't know about, and a lot of people miss the opportunity.
Does it work on a short-term rental property, or does it have to be a primary?
It does not have to be a primary.
Because we got rent, duh.
You got rent, so this is going to be an investment property, right?
Could it be on a short-term rental? We don't care.
We don't care. We
Just
don't care.
how long do we have to show? Where does the appraiser get it?
They actually look at. Probably the MLS. I couldn't tell you exactly where they're getting that information from.
So how great is that, right? What's the down payment on something like this?
So for an investment property you can do as little as 15% down.
So it doesn't cost that much. Here, do your easy math. Let's say I buy a house for $300,000. How much money am I going to have to come up with?
So 15%
All right, is that the lowest amount I need?
for an investment property.
Okay.
Yes. 45 grand.
$4,500.
45,000.
45,000. What did you say? Yeah. All right, so 45,000, right? This is where your HELOC comes into play. You pull the money out of the other house, pull 45 grand out of the other house, you get this one going, this one throws off. Any idea what the mortgage is on this?
So if
Plus
you're
minus.
looking at $2,000, you're probably looking at about 300, 325.
Okay. So these numbers work right here, so right?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
All right, so I just want to make sure I'm clear. So I can see obviously the rental income offsets the pity.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Now again, you're saying how this affects your debt to asset ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly debt is being reduced? Let's say you're borrowing $200,000. We see that the pity's offset. So then what is your debt considered then?
It is what you currently have. So if you
So
own
the
a
whole
home,
new loan is considered zero debt?
zero debt. That is correct.
'Cause the
We are
rent's
not
covered.
including
Rent's
the
covered.
proposed income or the proposed.
So to calculate
yeah.
your debt to income
Mhm.
ratio, this would offset, so then your new debt would not be considered part of the debt
That's correct. Until you go to purchase a new investment property.
next time around.
So let's talk about it. DSCR covers that, right?
DSCR covers that.
Let's talk about do y'all know what let's talk about what DSCR is.
Debt service coverage relief. DSCR. Debt service coverage relief. And essentially what we are going to do is we're not going to look at your income. We're only going to look at your assets, and we are going to order, just like we did with this one, a rent comparable schedule on the appraisal. So we're going to have an appraiser come out, see what the home is worth, what it can rent for, and we're going to look at the cash flow on an incoming property. We're not going to look at your income.
So the cool thing about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is when we're doing the first part of this, you're looking at our personal checkbooks and everything.
Mm-hmm.
When you do a DSCR, you're looking at the property. As long as the individual can come up with the down payment, the ease of getting a loan is significantly easier. Is that right?
It is correct. It is correct.
You're not filling out
because
nearly the paperwork and the tax reports and all
I
that
was
stuff.
going to say, for y'all are self-employed. Y'all have the ability to write off, which you should as self-employed borrowers. But the caveat to that is once you write off, we look at your net income on the tax returns when purchasing properties. So if you make $300,000, but you write off $250,000, your qualifying income is only $50,000.
It already throws off your debt to income ratios on everything else when you're doing it the other way.
And with the DSCR, we're solely looking at the property itself. I'm not looking at your income. I'm not going to ask you for tax returns. I don't want to see it. I don't want to know how much money you're making.
Which is really good for young people too, as long as they got the down payment to come in, right? Because this isn't an age requirement either, is it? It's just
No, it is. It is solely, you have to have it as an investment property. There is no intent to occupy the home. It solely is an investment property loan. There are some options out there that can do 10%, but you are going to be paying the rent or the interest rate for that. So if you have 15, 20% down, that is ideal when you're looking at a DSCR loan.
yeah. And again, you pull some equity out of something else or whatever that gets you into it. The renters pay it down, appreciation and inflation build it up, and then you can put the money back into whoever borrowed it or your equity pulled out, and then you can even refi, I suppose, at some point into a different long-term situation.
Absolutely.
Because a DSCR loan is probably a short-term situation, a bridge type of thing.
And you can do the DSCR loans. They do have it 30-year fixed options for it. There's typically a hit to the interest rate. So you're probably going to be looking at a 5-year arm, like an adjustable rate mortgage. Most common is a 5-year. You can do 7 years. And when you get into that avenue of DSCR, you're going to be looking into potentially interest-only payments at first, where you're not paying the principal on it, you're paying only interest. So it reduces your debt to income ratio, or it reduces your monthly payment, increases your positive cash flow for it. Again, I don't think that's like a long-term
Let me
solution.
move this out of the
Yep.
way. So let's think about this for a minute. There's strategy and smart and not as smart ways of doing this. If you're younger and have a longer time horizon, I would encourage a lower down payment,
Absolutely.
right? Try to get down to 0, because you got long time to pay it back, and somebody else is going to pay it back. So stretch that out. Or if you're a little bit older, middle age like me.
I'm
Did you guys see that trick? That was interesting. Anyway, so when you're maybe a little bit older, your timeline or your time horizon isn't nearly as long. You want to, there we go again. You want to make sure that you're all right, because markets go up and they go down, right? And you don't want to get stuck with a property you can't afford because the market went down, and now you have to sell in a down market. That's not fun. So what saves you from that is having enough money and enough equity in the property. You don't have to worry about it because your rent will always cover. So just be careful on this when you get into this. Young kids, whatever. You got a long time. You can stretch that out and you can ride through these markets. Because one thing I know for sure, you go back and look at time, prices of real estate go up over time. Now within that period, there's some ups and downs, but it's always up and to the right. Going back to somewhere around when Christ put out his first 2x4. Same thing with rent. Always up and to the right. If you don't believe me, think about what you were paying for rent when you went to college compared to what they're paying now, or what the rent is, whatever, here now.
And I'll tell you that
Always.
with rent in Knoxville, that's where I live, and that's where we have one of our rental properties. If you have a renter that is actually with the foreign national armies and they're here, whether they're the British or the Aussies or anything like that, their embassy actually accounts for increased cost of living. So we fell into a great deal when we got ours tenants. We've got a couple in there from England. The embassy guarantees an increase of 10% of their rent every single year.
Wow.
So I've got a 3-year lease on our property, increasing 10% every year. I don't have to do anything with it. It is a great little thing. So Knoxville, where you're looking, where a lot of military are coming in and out of, that's a great place to invest as well. Not just in the Destin market. Yes, ma'am.
So, scenario, let's say you have an investment property that needs fixing up, a fixer up, or even mold or whatever. Is there a way to get a loan to either flip or to convert it to an investment property?
There are fix and flips loans. I can get the information, and I'll get your card and send you some information on that, because there are options.
Is that a construction
available.
perm loan type of thing, or? No, that's to build new.
Fix and flip. And the other thing would be, if you don't flip and you want to keep it as a rental, as like a short-term rental, like I have a property in my pocket over here near the beach, would is there a loan that would allow that to have money to fix it and then become a rental?
Yeah, typically they do limit renovation loans to primary homes, but there are a few little niche lenders out there. So I am a direct lender, so that means we work, directly with Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie Mae. But we also do have the ability to broker out some loans, so I can definitely take a look and see if there's renovation loans for investment properties for you.
You had a question?
Yeah, question. All right, so let's say you're buying investment property. Is there any difference in your being able to qualify or interest rate if you buy it in an LLC name compared to just your personal name? Everything else being the same.
There is no difference with the interest rate on whether you closed it in an LLC or your personal name. Not a lot of lenders will allow you to close in an LLC, but in the market that we're coming into, a lot of lenders are now opening that ability up to close into an LLC.
What's their concern? I mean, obviously risk is somewhere hidden in there, but what's... Sounds like a
I
name
would-
game to me, but obviously they got some problem with it.
I would assume that maybe goes along with like mortgage fraud, straw buyer type situation. You know, they could potentially see some potential for like a straw buyer. You know, some sort of mortgage fraud. So that is really because LLCs, they can change hands pretty quickly, but if it's tied to your name, it's your name. Your name's not going to change. LLCs can, so it's a little bit more.
But to be sure, if you're buying these investment properties, you want to get them into an LLC as quickly as possible if there's renters attached to it.
Absolutely.
For sure. And that's a talk with your lawyer and your banker. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is investment property. What if you have a student at UA and you want to buy a piece of property, but you want them to live in it as well? Can they not do that, or
No,
are
they
you saying
absolutely
can, as long as they have renters in there with them?
Well, so my suggestion, if
They don't
you're
have to have
wanting
renters. The renters just subsidize the cost to own the property.
my suggestion is if you're wanting to buy at UA, have whoever your child or whoever you're purchasing it with go on as a primary and do it as a primary residence, and have you co-sign, and you're the income provider and they're the ones that are meeting the occupancy for you.
But they could still get roommates.
Can you do
And
that in
They
any
can
state
still get
or only in
roommates.
Florida?
Do it.
Can you do that anywhere?
You can do it anywhere.
Can you do it in Pennsylvania?
I am not licensed in Pennsylvania, but somebody that I work with is licensed in Pennsylvania. I'm licensed in Arizona, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, and California.
so the smart play, people, is find a property that will cash flow so it doesn't cost you anything, and then let the renters pay it down, and appreciation and inflation run it up. And then play a long game. I'm talking 20, 30 years. So if you're sitting in this room and you're in your 30s, in 30 years you're going to be in your 60s, right? And you're going to have this property that is just sitting out there. It's an insurance policy for you that you can draw on the whole time, right? To go on vacations and let you. I'll give you an example. I've got one condo that I bought my Jeep, my wife's car, my son's car, my daughter's car. We'd buy a property and the income went down. The next year, the renters paid it right back up. Down, up, down. Now here we are. I don't have any car payments, don't have any of this, or whatever, right? And they're all, I'm not going to give you tax advice, but there's a lot of tax advice out there with regard to all that stuff as well. Do it, especially if you can buy a property now while prices are quote unquote high. In 30 years, these prices ain't going to be high, all right? They're going to be, I wish I would have. And then you're going to be looking at me and going, I'm glad I did. And you're like, right?
No,
I mean, that's the way it
it's
works.
Well, even in the past few years, I know we've missed out on opportunities. Even when we were at the height of the market, interest rates were so low, so home prices were just being inflated. But it was still a great time to buy investment properties. I mean, we saw it. Everybody was doing investment properties. I still think now is a good time because not as many people are going to be purchasing. Unfortunately, it is pushing out like a lot of first-time home buyers with the interest rates and what that mortgage payment is going to be and the cost of living. So it is an opportune time for investors to get in and capitalize on it, because as soon as rates drop, because they will drop, we know that when it's going to happen is who's to say. We could be we're probably going to be in this market for another 6 to 9 months minimum with the interest rates that we're in right now. So we just got to ride that wave out. But what we can do is capitalize on it, because once rates do drop, everybody is going to be a feeding frenzy. Everybody's going to get
Prices
in,
are
and
jump
we're going to see
big
prices
time.
jump.
We've talked about that. So think about this, people. You have a house now with these golden handcuffs. You're locked in. You got this low rate. I don't want to move. I don't want to move. I don't want to move. Okay, fair enough. Got it. Makes sense. The rates are high. They're probably going to go higher. But we're entering into a unstable environment. All right, and there's talk that the rates will come down. They most likely will, which is a terrific opportunity to lever via a HELOC into a property now, as long as that property, even with the high rate on the HELOC, whatever that may be, if it's cash flow positive, you're still good. And then what's going to happen is in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, you can do a cash out refi at that point and pay back your HELOC, do the cash out refi, and get a new lower rate once the rates go lower, right? It doesn't make sense to do refi or cash out refis now because the rates are going up. But when they start going down, you can cash out, pull that equity, pay back your HELOC, make yourself whole over there again, and maintain your low long-term mortgage on there, and then refi into a lower price on your second property, your first investment, so to speak. It's such a smart way to go on your money. But if you're going to wait till the prices go down, you better be sitting ready to write a check, or with your check, your cash in hand, or Bitcoin, or bars of gold. Because this thing, as soon as they lower the rates, the mortgage rates, buyers are going to jump and say, oh my God, finally I'm buying. And as soon as they start buying, sellers are going to say, oh my goodness, thank God, I want to sell at these high prices. I'm selling, and they're going to raise the price. It's going to be crazy nuts high, just like it was. I don't know if you know this or not, but the price of real estate, I think nationwide, has gone up 47% from 2019 to today. That's double. It's crazy, right? And in Destin, I think it's up 93% or something. Even Panama City scans, it's up. Prices have doubled, you guys, in the last couple of years. And if you think they're going to come down, I can't see why they're going to come down. Other than maybe there's a world war or something, which is probably getting more and more likely. I don't know what's going to take to make prices come down, other than nothing.
And I'm sorry.
Having said that, they're probably crashing tomorrow, but
quick question or clarification on the DSCR. So is DTI not a component of that loan approval?
DTI is not a component.
Credit score?
that's the benefit of it,
credit
actually.
Score, yeah, credit score is going to be a component. Most minimum credit scores for that program are going to be 620, which I think is a very reasonable credit score. So 620, you can find some that do 10% down. I would probably recommend doing 15 to 20% down, just because the hit to the interest rates. But we are looking solely at the cash flow for the property. We're looking at what your monthly payment is versus the rent that's going to be projected to come into that property.
Okay, so what do you see when those types of loans are getting denied? What is typically the main cause on that program denying a loan?
So typically what we're seeing is that the rent is just not there.
Okay.
It's inflated. Oh yeah, we get millions on this place. Show me the numbers.
Rental projections on the MLS?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So that's probably the number one. We look at it as a 2-to-1 ratio. We want to see at least 50% more projected rental income than your current principal and interest on the home.
So is it just principal and interest they're using? When
Taxes and insurance, the full payment. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a phenomenal option, I think, for people who are self-employed. Because like I said, you get to write everything off as a self-employed borrower, but the caveat to that, or the downside, is your qualifying income is far less than what your actual gross income is.
So it has to cash flow a decent amount. It can't just be a 1-to-1?
There are some options we could do 1-to-1. Again, you'll probably be looking at a higher hit to the interest rate, and I would say maybe not like bringing it up in rate itself, but the cost of the rate itself.
And it works for short-term rentals.
John, what would you do if you had $500,000 to $600,000 in equity in your home? Get a HELOC. It's going to be at 10%. What would you do with that equity?
If I have a primary residence and no investment properties,
I have investment properties, but let's say I have $500,000 to $600,000 in equity in my house. What would you do?
I would spend your money easy. I'd go buy a couple of my listings. If it comes down to your strip. What are you trying to do? Is what I would ask you. What is your goal? I mean, are you trying to create passive income for your future? Right?
Well, I was also thinking.
Because you're going to put your primary
I
at
was
risk
thinking
if you take your
downsizing,
money out.
Renting my house to my daughter and her family, which can occupy the whole place, I can't, it's just too big. So if I downsize, what would be the smart way to use a HELOC? Or is it even worth it because the interest rate would be so high for the HELOC?
Are you going to charge your
Can I
daughter
just
rent?
Can I use my VA, you know, whatever's left of my VA and go buy and combine it with a HELOC, or no?
So you could potentially do a HELOC if you wanted to pay for closing costs, but if you're going to be using a VA loan, you're not going to have a down payment, so you'd only be responsible for closing costs on the property. And that is a complete, true change of circumstance. You are downsizing. That makes complete sense for you to use your VA loan to occupy as a primary residence for a smaller home.
I don't wanna get rid of my primary, I mean, it just.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Is your primary a VA loan? It has to be paid off before you have enough VA.
No.
Oh, no, we've got
No,
it.
you can do up to 7.
So when you have a VA loan, we look at your VA entitlement. So let's say you've got your VA entitlement, it's already tied up, there's a certain amount, there's a number that I'm gonna pull or get to see when I look at your certificate of eligibility. I now have to go off of the conforming loan limit and see how much remaining VA entitlement that you have, because the VA does have what they call bonus entitlement. So you are able to have more than one VA loan at a time. And so let's say you had where you could purchase a property that had $300,000. The property now that you want is worth $325,000. That is the property. The VA is not going to say, no, we're just not going to let you do that property anymore. They're going to take that difference with what the purchase price is and what your VA remaining entitlement is, and they're going to charge you 25% of that difference.
Is your entitlement based on your purchase price or your current balance on your loan?
It is based off of the purchase price, whatever shows up on that, but it's not as bad as what you actually might think. So you might be looking at,
I owe a lot less than when I purchased it for, that's my point.
yeah, but if we pull your certificate of eligibility, we're not looking, it's not going to show like dollar per dollar. So let's say you did it for $100,000, you owe $10,000. We're not going to look and say your VA entitlement is $100,000. We're going to look at something else. There's a guarantee.
Let's move it. You guys can talk afterward. This is
Sorry.
this is something.
But the VA can be an investment property, the one you're leaving.
The one you're departing absolutely can. I've done it. We've done it for 3 properties.
Cool. Let's talk about land a little bit. Is there anything we can do about land?
You could potentially, I don't have the ability to do that, so I will caveat and say that. But you could purchase land with the intent to build on it. You can look at like a duplex or single family home and go that route. And you can do that as an investment.
Because if you guys think about this, there is a significant lack of housing. A massive lack of housing, even here, right? It seems like they're doing like building. You know what there's a massive lack of here? Duplexes, triplexes, and quads.
Yeah.
Are there any?
Yeah.
I gotta think they would crush if you could find some land to put them on. That's a build. Anybody else have any questions? This is really cool. If you're smart about this, you can figure out how to lever these products where you don't need hardly, you can get down to 1%, right? You should be able to, and if you can't afford it, just save a little bit or put it on your credit card for God's sake, which normally I wouldn't tell you to do. But if you're smart about it, you can move it quickly enough, you can pay it off and get a heck of a bunch of airline miles. I guess.
Now, I will tell you,
What are you gonna put on your credit card?
I don't know. Somebody bought a house for $80,000, and they had to come up with whatever 10%. So $8,000. I'd put $8,000 on my credit card, buy that place, if they would let me do it. Or you could buy the whole damn place, depending on your credit card, I suppose. And then pay it off quickly. If if it's a cash flow situation or a liquidity situation. Be very careful though, that's dangerous. I'm not telling you to go spend high interest credit cards.
Now, I will tell you, starting November 18th, there was a huge announcement with Fannie Mae. So
This
in
is huge. This will
regards-
massively impact our area.
What did
In-
Fannie Mae say?
Fannie Mae is starting November 18th with multi-unit properties, 2 to 4 units. They used to, even as a primary residence, if it was a 2 to 4 unit property, 2 to 3 or 1 to 2 unit would be, I'm sorry, back up a little bit. 2 to 3 unit would be 15% down payment, even if it is a primary residence. If it was 3 to 4 units, it was 25% down. Starting November 18th, if you occupy the home as a primary residence, meaning you live in one unit and rent out the other 3, 5% down.
5%. That's
5%
cheap.
down, regardless of
Yeah, it's
whether
big.
it's 1 to 4.
Yeah.
This is huge. Huge, huge, huge. I've had people do it.
There's not a lot here.
There's not a lot here. In Fort Walton, there are some out there. I've done a few fourplexes out there. One actually utilized a VA loan.
Right, you can do
To
Here's the thing, you guys. You don't have to get rich here.
yeah.
There's a lot of other parts of the world
Mm-hmm.
that you can make an awful lot of money. Yes, you from South Africa. What?
It is. It is nationwide. Nationwide. It is not just here to Florida.
Pennsylvania. up
Yeah.
in that
There's a
area.
lot of places.
Oh my God, I bought one for $135 and I've got a positive cash flow, but the minute I get my daughter out of there, let her buy her own home, I'm gonna be making like $2,000-3,000 a month.
Yeah. There's ways.
Because those homes are old. and
We're
they-
crushing it in Oxford. I know over in Phoenix, Scottsdale, they were doing good. I don't know about someone now, but
They were.
they were. So there's a lot of places, but you got to take on the mindset of what can I buy that's going to cash flow? How much can I get into it for? Especially if I have kids or I'm younger, because as an older person, I can tell you 20 years is like this.
Yeah.
It'll get you. And I am so glad I bought the things I did, and I still regret I didn't buy a bunch of other stuff. But dang, I'm glad I bought it. And believe me, everything I bought was like, oh my God, like, oh, I don't know. And now I'm like, yeah, that's right, I bought those, right? My confidence has gone up over time. It's even our house. When I bought the house we currently live in, we bought it, got it under contract, and got home, and I called the agent up. We're out, tear it up, we're out. And I called in the morning, we're in. It's just, it's the nature of the beast. And I'm so glad I was in on all of that. And matter of fact, the stuff we sold, that's another thing. I wish I would have never sold any of it. I wish I would have figured out. I wish we'd had conversations like this that got me to understand, do not sell, keep. Skins, you wish you had your stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, because you could have your stuff and your new stuff. But we didn't know.
And for me, I'm thinking, because I've got 4 kids. My oldest is 16, turning 17. So, like, when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about him, because the goal of parenthood is to have your kids do better than what you've done for yourself. And so we want to have that set up, because we weren't set up that way with our families. They just didn't have the capabilities. And now, we do have a little bit more to give.
My
back
parents
to
never
our
talked to me
kids.
about any of this.
Bingo.
Work hard, son.
Yeah.
What?
Go to college.
Yeah. Right?
Serve your
So-
country.
Yeah, so we're, just trying to set up our kids, and eventually, when he turns 18, wherever he goes to college, that is our plan, is to let him go on as a primary. He's already on our credit cards as an authorized user, so he's populating a credit score at the age of 16, which is great. So again, I do those loans all the time around like Tallahassee. I do it at in Alabama, around Tuscaloosa. So I do that with a lot of people, and it's a really huge benefit. So I can talk to you about that.
And keep in mind, as your parents get older and they find themselves in assisted living, that's big bucks, people. Right now, it's like 10 grand a month already. 10, 15 years from now, it isn't going down, it's going up. So find a way to pay for that. You don't want to wheel, your dad out on a hill and have him look out at crappy acres. But you know, it's just the way it is. Just the way it is. That's all we got because we're gonna have to wrap this up. But I appreciate you coming, Mallory. Thanks a lot. And if you guys take advantage of this, it'll be good. It'll be good.
I did pass out little
I think I passed out. It's hot as heck in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
beginner guides to real estate. So it's got some information in there. So if you want to start investing, kind of what to look for, you know, little good tips and tricks for it. So, okay.
If you're on At the Beach team, I emailed you guys the market update. Katie's passed out our sales sheets.
Because I'm going to get some information.
Work hard,
I send it to you.
Okay,
make your calls, more listings.
They're upstairs. I'm going to
I get that.
give me your number.
Not one.
If you're on here, thank you for participating.